Thank you, delegates. Before we commence our next session, I'd just like to let delegates know that the conference report that we'll be considering in the final session today will be uploaded to the resources gallery on the event phone app. It'll also be emailed to delegates and the report will be available at approximately 1 p.m. So that's the report that we are going to of the conference that we are going to discuss and with recommendations to adopt the report in our final session this afternoon. So that will be emailed and will be available on the events app from 1 p.m. today, 1 p.m. Western Standard Time today. So I encourage those of you to look at your email or to check the resources section in the events app from 1 p.m. today for consideration this afternoon. We now move on to the next session, which is a hybrid panel conversation and question and answer convened by the Honourable Ngaree Ah Kit. Before I hand over to Speaker Ah Kit, I'd just like to remind the speakers that are online before to pause just briefly before you commence speaking so that you avoid speaking over each other. And just like to indicate that there is a young person in the chamber who is not considered a stranger and who is welcome in the chamber. If you are online and you're hearing the noise, that's what it is. Okay. And it is with much pleasure that I hand over for this session to Speaker Ah Kit.
Thank you, President Clossie, and welcome back, conference delegates. I just want to acknowledge our youngest guest in our chamber today. It's absolutely lovely to have my colleague Ayor Mokochuot's beautiful baby boy here with us. I think it's a great reminder for all of us in the important roles that we do, why we're doing what we're doing. So without further ado, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this beautiful land on which we gather, the Whadjuk peoples of the Noongar Nation. I pay my deepest respect to elders past, present and emerging. I thank them for their custodianship of country. I acknowledge their strong and continued connection to culture. And more importantly, I congratulate them on their important work to have their native title rights recognised. Well done. So this session, as President Clossie has said, is a bit of a hybrid. I am in the chamber of the Legislative Assembly in Western Australia today, which is an absolute privilege, and I am joined by fellow Aboriginal politicians from around the country, and I really thank you for taking the time to join us today. When we look at the conference program and we're looking at the importance of all of the work that we're doing, we always must remember, I guess, the impact that our Parliament has on our First Nations people. I myself am a proud Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander woman. I was first elected to the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly back in 2016, and one of those politicians who followed my parents in. So my dad was the Labor member for Arnhem for a period of 10 years, and I got to watch my dad very closely, the impacts that he had as the first Aboriginal minister in our Parliament, and the great changes and the great legacy that he left. So it's something that I aspire to and something that I continue the tradition of trying to make really good changes for all Territorians, and in particular to make sure that I leave a really good legacy for my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as well. And that's something I'm very proud of to see the other people online this morning. I'll start with the introductions. So we have Ms. Dvinia D'Anna, the member of the Legislative Assembly for Western Australia. Thank you, Dvinia. Dvinia was elected to the 41st Parliament for the Kimberley on the 13th of March 2021. She is a proud Yawuru, Nimambor and Bardi woman who was born and raised in Broome and has lived in the Kimberley her whole life. We also have the Honourable Hon Kyam Maher, who has been a member of the Legislative Council of South Australia since October 2012. Kyam grew up in country South Australia and graduated from with law and economics degrees before practising law for the Crown Solicitor's Office. in South Australia. He has held a number of ministerial appointments, including Aboriginal Affairs and Reconciliation. We also have Ms. Sheena Watt, who is a member of the Legislative Council of Victoria. Sheena was elected in October 2020 to representing the Northern Metropolitan Region. A Yorta Yorta woman, she is the first Indigenous Australian woman to represent the Australian Labor Party in the Parliament of Victoria. And we also have the Honourable Rosetta, or Rosie, Sahanna, who is a member of the Legislative Council of Western Australia, elected in 2021 to represent the mining and pastoral region. She is a proud Kimberley woman. It is the first Aboriginal person elected to the Western Australian Legislative Council. Thank you very much for joining us today. So this session is a really good opportunity for us as Aboriginal Australian parliamentarians to share some of the insights that we go through. We often hear the phrases of walking in two worlds. So I'm going to pose a few of the questions and we're going to see where the conversation takes us. So as Aboriginal politicians, how have you found that you've had expectations thrust upon you to achieve for your community and for all of your peoples more widely? And the first question that I wanted to pose was, looking at how Aboriginal politicians can be better supported once we're elected to be able to do our job and walk in those two worlds. So, Kyam, I might throw to you first, please. Kyam, can you hear me? Okay. Can any of the other participants online? Sheena, can you hear me at the moment? Fantastic. Sheena, I might get you to go first. So talking a bit about your experience, how do you think Indigenous politicians can be better supported with some of the expectations we have thrust upon us once we enter Parliament?
Oh, that's a big question. I hope everyone can hear me. Hello. Hi all. Thank you very much for the invitation to be on this panel, and I too come to you from Aboriginal lands and pay my respect to the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and honour and respect elders past and present. And I had really thought about this question because I couldn't quite work out all the things that needed to happen to support me and that I would have loved in my now 12 months. And, you know, one of the biggest changes for me is the change in my relationship between Aboriginal people, communities and Aboriginal leadership in the state and how that's changed since being elected. And there's no other Aboriginal MPs in the Victorian Parliament, and so that was something that I've sort of had to navigate myself, and we don't have so I think that's probably the biggest one, is the change of my relationship with my community and with elders and senior people. And I also think I've copped a bit of abuse online lately, and so I think support for around managing my online safety. That would be one that particularly comes to mind. I've had lots of, online hate sort of directed my way. I've been compared to a Nazi in the last sort of 2 weeks as we are coming out of lockdown here in Victoria, and just some really hurtful, harmful things that have been thrown my way. And in my first 12 months, that was a lot to kind of manage. So I reckon they're probably two, and I know that the other panelists will have some interesting thoughts as well.
Thank you, Sheena. Rosie, can you hear me?
Oh, hang on a minute. Sorry.
Thank you, Rosie. So how, in your opinion, since being elected, do you think Aboriginal politicians could be better supported?
I share the same view as the previous speaker. Sorry, I'm trying to, Sheena. Yes, Sheena. I think it is the relationship we have prior to becoming an MPs to where we are today. We need to change our whole mindset. It's different. It definitely is different. You, as a non-member of Parliament, you get really involved with Indigenous affairs right on the ground. So, being in this big arena now, you need to change your mindset. And I that's one thing I'm struggling with right now because I've been involved in Indigenous affairs for over 30 years. So, I recognize the fact that I need to change my mindset around that. And secondly, your point on online, your social media, yes, is something we need to protect as MPs. You do get hate mails and name calls and stuff, but it only makes you stronger. You get to ignore it because you yourself know what your worth is. So it's not worth listening to people what they say or what they hear. So it makes you stronger and you do your job better. So the other thing for me was the really hard for a new person coming in is understand the politics within the party. For me, I found it is very complicated and also very confusing. So I find myself having to learn and understand more, and that's from talking to other colleagues in the upper house. So it gives me a better understanding of how the system works. And again, it can be frustrating at times, but you have to, you have to navigate your way around to make it fit for your term while you're in there. So I'm trying to, navigate all that and hopefully make it work for my term and for this 4 years. And for someone like me, it's a learning process. We all go through a learning process in our life, and we learn something new every day. So for me, this is my first term here, and I am really it's a challenge itself, and I'm looking forward to use my experience and knowledge to make things better for the try to anyways improve standards, I guess, for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander in my electorate. I am a Kimberley girl, born and bred, but my electorate covers the Kimberley right through to the north central, right through to Kalgoorlie. So it is a big electorate, and I'm hoping to cover all bases, I guess, during my term here and learn as much as I can too, because I come from a big family, actually, from the northeast of the Kimberley right through the Yamaji country. So, and I'm married a Torres Strait Islander, so it's quite a big thing for me. So yeah, that's actually me, really. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing that. Dvinia, can you hear me? How do you think Indigenous politicians can be better supported? I'll pose a question to you now, Dvinia. How do you think Indigenous politicians could be better supported?
Thank you for the question. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which I'm coming from. I'm actually broadcasting from bush meeting in Hon Ngaree country, but it's within my electorate. Again, I've been privileged enough to come to state government in the lower house. The third Indigenous woman, but the fourth Indigenous politician going through WA Parliament. So I guess the path, luckily enough for me, has been slowly being paved along. Yes, some that I found, I totally agree with Sheena. My first name, sorry. I totally Sheena. Some of the social media stuff has come around. We always my story, I'm also a proud Kimberley woman that has lived and grew up from, Broome right up to Kanara. It's an electorate, twice the size of two Victorias. And I'm one person. I've been privileged enough to work with the people on the ground, and then Indigenous politics can be ruthless and direct things in the struggle that lead down to Perth in an environment similar politics with such rules of in regards to trying to change, change for not only for non-Indigenous people too. The challenge for me is that I'm finding in this last 7 months that I've is acknowledging past I say vision setters before me. How do I fill those? What can I do? I've been quite privileged enough to enter into Parliament as Rosie, who have experience and lucky to do and tap into the next house, because as an Indigenous woman, as a woman from the Cape, it's been quite supportive for me to vet or discuss things. But yes, as a politician in the Parliament, and be about that well-being, about managing those trolls online and stuff. Learn to close off and drive us, but also finding that balance for me, because about family obligations and also while I'm there and I'm most of the a big picture role to play as well. One other thing I'll throw out there, like Google, and I can't speak for all in this way, and I don't ever claim to be the know-all, be-all. There's what can support is awareness immersion type activity. I mean, it was wonderful. The Wajak Noongar people have done trainings, knowing that the state is so huge state with different cultures within, also mix it up. Did I answer the question?
Thank you. You absolutely did, Dvinia. Thank you very much for that. I don't believe we have Kyam on at the moment.
I'm trying to get in there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, ladies. That was very, very interesting. And it's a lot of similarities there, I guess, between our journeys so far. We often hear that people didn't really consider becoming a politician until they were tapped on their shoulder by somebody who maybe saw that leadership potential. I'm just wondering whether that was the situation for all of you wonderful ladies. Sheena, I might ask you first. Did somebody tap you on the shoulder and encourage you to become a politician?
Well, yes and no. I often thought about the fact that our parliament here in Victoria didn't have any Aboriginal people. We did have a member, Lydia Thorpe, that served in the state parliament for a short period of time before now being a member of the federal parliament. But that wasn't okay for me, that it was empty, and I wanted to make sure that that First Nations voice was heard. And so I did have some people encourage me, but it was a very short process with mine, because it was a very sort of unexpected vacancy that came up. It wasn't the same pre-selection as other members here may have been involved in. I kind of happened at a time when we were in lockdown and stage 4 and 5 kilometre zones and all such things. So it was a very different experience, I think, to just about everyone else who's ever gone through pre-selection. So the chance to sit and be supported by other women in the party, it came about in a very different way for me. So yes, I was encouraged by others. but it was also like a casual vacancy, which meant that you kind of had to make the decision very, very quickly. And by very quickly, I mean within like 3 hours. So it wasn't sort of a sitting around and sort of thinking about it and what does this mean. It was a very sort of sudden decision that I made, and was lucky to, enjoy the support right across, across our party, so that I could get sworn in now 12 months ago. So yeah, different experience. And I haven't even had a chance to thank some people face to face that offered me that support. People like, Senator Dvinia McCarthy from the Northern Territory. Like, we've had borders and such, I haven't even had a chance to give her a big hug and say thank you for all that you've done for me, and providing me that, cultural support that I needed in a really tough time. So yeah, that's been tough, but I can't wait to kind of get out and borders open and come and be around some folks that lent me some support in that time. So yeah, watch out.
Excellent. Thank you, Sheena. And well done for putting your hand up with only a couple of hours' notice. How about yourself, Rosie? Did somebody tap you on the shoulder and encourage you to be the first Aboriginal member of the Legislative Council for WA?
Yeah, actually, it was the number 4 on the ticket, which was very unusual for a number 4 to get in. And I thought, and I really never had, I never thought number 4 would get in. So, but Labor did so well in the state election that, we got the 4 on the ticket all in. So, that's been quite a thing for me. And coming into this position, I didn't even know that I was the first Aboriginal woman in the upper house. So there you go. Let alone getting in, into the upper house. So, but yeah, that's and I think it's been a wonderful journey so far, and I'm just going to keep on learning, I guess.
Great answer, Rosie. How about you, Dvinia? Did somebody tap you on the shoulder and encourage you?
I know the way that I've worked in the Kimberley over the last 20 years, in trying to improve, their environment in which they're always advocating on, whether it be rights, social emotional well prevention. It's always been a constant project, and I guess it's been naturally over the years into being that conduit or the messenger of, these are the people from these communities that are saying this stuff. This is what's needed. That's how this is organization. Over time, I've built myself into a position. I never could lay of the Kimberley. I've also supported previous, which has always been a pleasure and immense pride when you see one of your own mob that are up there representing respect for the. I'd like to acknowledge other women and other Indigenous politicians across Australia that have also us to get up, stand up, and participate. Turning points in about 4 or 5 years ago was starting to have these conversations with people behind, saying, you should really think about. I never thought about running, and I never really thought about it. It was kind of a natural progression plan. Some people kept in touch with me. How do you feel about this? When you look back on it, what was I never grow up saying, when I grow up, I want to be a politician. I think it was just a natural path. It took me the road there. I've always been the person behind the leader to rally up, because our leader is no good without followers. And I've been that person is following the vision, rallying up the people, come to fruition. An interesting conversation with a friend of mine, because I participated in a program called the Jawa Emerging Leaders Program and the Stories of Female Leadership a couple of years ago, about 4 or 5. And one of them, Sarah, a friend of mine went this year. Oh, Divi, the capsules up, goals, SOFL members before to have your capsule. And I said, why? Well, I remember it was so long ago. Your capsule actually said that one of your goals eventually for Kimberley, and I was like, oh, I never really remember. At one stage, when I thought about it, you passively think in your mind direct, but it wasn't about advocating for the people that didn't really feel they had a voice. There were certain change can occur from grassroots levels to organize to policy decisions, but it's also making, that sets decisions and, the reviews, how is it, what the consequence? I read.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dvinia, for everybody else for sharing your answers with us. So since being elected, I would assume that you've all faced challenges as strong and proud Aboriginal women and found ways to overcome them to be able to deliver in your role as elected members. My next question, I guess, centres on a bit around that. Can you share with everybody at the conference perhaps one or two of those challenges that you faced and what sort of steps you've taken to overcome that in order to be able to do your job? I will go to Sheena.
Okay, I'll go first again.
First again now, Sheena.
I know. All right. What have I got?
You're the youngest, eh?
Yeah. And the furthest away too.
Oh, and the cutest.
Oh, thank you. I'll take it. And I was thinking about this and some of the challenges I had to overcome. It's been, 12 months. I would say one was the sort of toxic nature of social media. And how I distance myself from it, and what are some of the self-care measures that I put in place to make sure that, I don't read the comments and don't read the tweets, and there's some things that I've just had to do and that my team wrap around and support me on. I've been involved in some pretty big things like, pandemic legislation and state of emergencies and some other ones that have really heightened up some extremists in our community that have got me a little bit fearful for my, not only for myself, but my family safety, I'll be honest. And we've got some, so thinking about my personal safety and my family safety and having a tough talk with my loved ones about what happens and to what extent can you publicly, it's different because I'm in the city. It's, I suppose it's different if you're living in a small community, but, I can say to mum, hold up, like, let's not, I know you're proud and all, but don't tell everyone everywhere what your daughter does. Everyone in the street knows what I do. And now every time I go visit mum, I have neighbours come knocking, hey, and I'm thinking, no more, stop it. So I've had to put some sort of self-care protections around me. I also found it was really hard to navigate Parliament in a pandemic. Like when I started, we had like pandemic Parliament, which meant that I sat in the Observers Gallery for my first 9 months in Parliament. I delivered my inaugural speech in the Observers Gallery. And so everyone keeps saying, can't wait to get back to normal. I didn't know what normal was. And so we still don't have it. So when it comes, I'll know, but until then, I'll have to work that one out. So there were special parliamentary procedures that are in place because we're in the pandemic, and limits and restrictions and a different way that we vote and all sorts of different things are happening that I've had to sort of navigate and get used to. I think the other one for me is a big challenge has been around cultural safety and education of Parliament staff. And I mean, I can't recall the amount of times that I've had people mistake me for kitchen staff. It doesn't matter if I'm in a suit. People just sort of naturally assume I'm I don't know, I'm a contractor, I'm a visitor or whatever, but other MPs have like face recognition, and I don't have that because I'm still the new kid. So I do get that a lot, and it kind of, oh, you're not supposed to go in this door. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it says members. I can go in that door and have to explain that's okay. Like, here's my pass. And so I wear my pass around me all the time. And I have had some contractors and other staff here at Parliament say stuff like, oh, yeah, but you don't look like an Aboriginal all the time. And when you have to come into your workplace and constantly have your culture and identity challenged all the time, it's pretty rough. So I reckon there are a few that I was happy to kind of share and reflect on. And, hey, I'm really looking forward to non-pandemic Parliament. Hopefully it's coming.
Perfect. Thank you, Sheena. That's some really important points you and challenges you've overcome there. So well done on your resilience, and thank you for sharing that with us. Rosie, how about yourself? What are some of the challenges that you've had to overcome since becoming elected?
Well, I guess when I decided to, when I was tapped on my shoulder to run for this seat, I decided, it took me a couple of weeks to decide on that, but after actually deciding to run for the seat, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So it took me another month to decide whether to go ahead with it or not, to stay and run on that ticket, be part of the party. And it took me a while to decide whether I want to do that or not, and being diagnosed with breast cancer was something that wasn't in my wasn't even thought of, really. It doesn't cross your mind until it happens. But one of my kids said to me that when does Rosie Sahanna ever give up on what she really wants to do? So I thought about that too, and that's something I've never do. I've always fought for what I believe in and stood up for what I believe in, and that's just who I am. I'm one of the people that have been around a long time. I have a lot of knowledge, and I've always been in the back seat. So I've always been in the back, and I live by the values raised on, look, listen, and learning, and that's what I've done, and my whole life. So being diagnosed with breast cancer was one. My family's another. I come from a very close family. And, this first term has been like 3 weeks away from home. And I'm so used to being with my family. They're my number one priority. My biggest achievement in my life is becoming a grandmother and a grandmother. And the other thing is the parliamentary duties. So the biggest challenge for me is finding balance between my health, my parliamentary duties, and my family. So, it's like playing what's that game? You put the balls up like this, but you got to find balance, and it's not as easy as it sounds. So I'm still going through my treatment. I see that more of a distraction for me to my parliamentary duties. So it keeps me going, and so I don't have to think about it. Parliamentary duties is a distraction to my health. So it just makes me stronger, and I'm pretty much focused. So I know what I want to do. I know how I'm going to do it. I came into this role with a plan, and there's priorities that I want to achieve, and if I can achieve one of them in the 4 years, that's enough for me. But the balance between all of that is very important for me. And I have a good network of close friends, and I have a very supportive family, so that's what motivates me and keeps me going. So yeah, thank you. That's
perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rosie. There's so much helpful information there. Really take a lot of strength out of your journey and your commitment to delivering on what you set out to do, becoming an elected member. So well done. How about yourself?
Sorry, and I love
Sorry?
to laugh. Laughing is a big healing thing for me. I love to laugh. It gets me away from everything. So there you go.
Absolutely. Well, you're making us all laugh here in person. So thank you for sharing that with us. How about yourself, Dvinia? What's some of the challenges you've found so far since becoming an elected member?
coming into the role previous, you kind of know the changes that you will face, the role that you. But then we get there, it's different. With the challenges was a lot of time away from family, and family is important. It is. So I guess some of the challenges is meeting, and also a constant battle in your mind, battling that guilt of being there. To go to my daughter's game all the time, plus all the other kids that I used to support and stuff. I guess not being so time, but more is one of the challenges. So family obligations between Parliament and duties in the electorate. You try and piggyback them as much as you can. Traveling to or something, and it's school holiday, maybe take the family up, so it's time with them as well. So I, but it's something that the role. You know, I have a 10-year-old, but he's a big support network around you is what has helped me come. And the other challenge for the family is I'm quite passionate without filters, controlling that openly, and that kind of stuff where they like to have a say on the world views of everything without consequences. It's their freedom to say that. Stop tagging me and everything. So yeah, that's one of the other challenges. One I'd like to the challenge for me to come into a place where you have to regulate and control your mannerism in which in regards to the rules of engagement, and also so your emotional feelings in which you people say you can go there and you can be yourself, but really you can't be yourself and say things. Frustrating moment, you're walking in and having conversations with people that really challenge. You have to deal with it in the most with really how you want to respond. If it was me responding last year, it would be totally different. So a bit of and looking at the bigger picture all the time, and trying to know and aim for in regards to picking and choosing your battle times. That's emotional toll on yourself, and you have to and handle it differently to what previous to the role, I guess. So that bit of self-regulation of myself, checking in with unruly comments, whether in real or things that get discussed, and you want to say, and there's a process for it, and you don't want to wait, and you want. But yeah, it's about self-regulation, self-control, and stay true to who I am and how I want to get my point across.
Very well said, Dvinia. Thank you very much for that. I guess it takes me back to Professor Colleen Hayward when she opened our conference earlier this week. There was a line that she included that really got me thinking over the last couple of days that I wanted to pose to you ladies before I'll open it up to the rest of the conference of questions. Professor Hayward said a line, and I'm paraphrasing, for Aboriginal politicians. So do we consider ourselves to be Aboriginal people who happen to be politicians? or are there times where we are politicians who happen to be Aboriginal people? So I was able to, we're having a bit of issues trying to connect with Kyam Maher from South Australia. So I actually spoke to Kyam about this a little bit yesterday, and it really did get me thinking, because I was raised by proud Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander parents who was identity first. I'm very blessed, and I take what you say on board, Sheena. I'm very blessed to have dark skin. When you look at me, I don't really get you don't look Aboriginal. I get that you look more Pakistani, Indian, Sri Lankan. I spend a lot of time at multicultural events, which I absolutely love. I don't take it as offence. I guess from my own experiences, but it doesn't feel nice to have your nationality or your heritage judged, for sure. So when I thought about Professor Hayward's line, and when I spoke to Kyam about it yesterday, I guess there are circumstances, only a few I'd like to manage, where upon reflection, I found myself to be a politician first, which is a lot of what Dvinia was saying about that self-regulation, and then an Aboriginal person second. And so I've been in for 5 years now. I've had a couple of those instances. I was just wondering if any of you ladies might like to comment on that, or whether you think that would be something that would come up over your term as well. So are we politicians first or Aboriginal people first? Rosie, I might come to you.
Okay, for me, I guess, look, it's always going to be an Aboriginal person first. I was born an Aboriginal. I wasn't born a politician. So for me, I'm an Aboriginal person first, and I'm a politician after. Secondly, as Aboriginal people, we learn over the years to work in both worlds. That's the downside of being an Aboriginal person. I guess you got to learn to work in both worlds. But not just learn, you've got to understand too. So that's where the politics come in. You understand, well, because as an Aboriginal person, you're so involved with Aboriginal politics at a regional level, at a local level, then there's a state level, and then there's a national level. So you kind of need to, as an Aboriginal person, you kind of need to prioritize, well, what comes. For me, that's more of a priority than saying you got to choose between being an Aboriginal or a politician first or second. For me, it's always going to be an Aboriginal person. I have to find that balance between being an Aboriginal politician to make things better for Aboriginal people. That's my first and foremost thing. And to walk in those both worlds is to find a balance that, we as Aboriginal people, we've been fighting our whole life for everything, It's going to come a time, and I certainly I support the Uluru Statement. That's a voice for Aboriginal people. It's a treaty. It's the truth. I also support the constitutional reform. Because Aboriginal Torres Strait people are not mentioned in the Constitution. The changes to the 1967 referendum that only gave federal parliament laws for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders to laws for Aboriginal people. It also, made decision for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people to be included in the census. What it didn't do is didn't recognize Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people as people of Australia. So, there's a lot of righting the wrongs that we need to do, and maybe I started my political career too old, but I'd like to think I'd like to contribute to that, to the changes, and that's why I guess I decided to become an Aboriginal politician rather than the other way around. So I've advocated for Aboriginal issues for over 30. My whole working life has always been about Aboriginal affairs, and I've done quite a lot in that field. My knowledge is my knowledge, but I want to use that in the next 4 years to make things better. But in the answer to your question, I'm always going to be an Aboriginal person first.
Perfect. Thank you, Rosie. How about yourself, Dvinia?
Oh, look, allude to the fact earlier, but I myself am a proud Aboriginal woman as well. being a politician is being a politician. It's not who you are. It's a job like any. So I will always be an Aboriginal woman, a teacher, an Aboriginal woman that will be a project officer, will be a representative of the Kimberley. Now, I'm lucky that the Kimberley has a lot of people that drive for that change. This it's not an argument. Things that I struggle with in my mind is, are you an Aboriginal politician or are you Aboriginal? I think our building Indigenous people to make sure that equity out there to be on the field, non-Indigenous something a role for not only Aboriginal politicians but non as well. Is that something I can focus and fight on? Absolutely. In my piece, I've said that being an Aboriginal politician does not give me the right, I believe, to speak on behalf of all Aboriginal people from across the electorate when there are diverse peoples. It's about, how do you have cultural authority? I don't claim to have cultural authority, but I have respect that hold the cultural authority. That kind of balancing freedom act of enough and between how do we support and nurture our Indigenous culture in this new world where there are rules and regulations and that's to what politicians do for creating and fighting good fights and developing the in which govern us, being about making sure that if you are making on issues that affect it, that definitely should be discussed. And now, is it the one in the room? Perhaps not. I think it for I support and truth telling and voice to Parliament, because I think in one of the reports that while we may speak for us, ultimately the job that we get put in and we get is to represent everyone within my electorate. People in my electorate, just saying. So having that balancing act of having the pride as definitely in regards to the earlier statement and some of the stuff that has come out of it, having that First Nations caucus or a voice to Parliament is definitely a real need in regards to. I meant to mention this for when you're saying how can we support Indigenous politicians in Parliament as well. These are other issues as well. So the sole burden does not only rest on us alone. Carry policy, change the way, huge policy that could change and shape the way Indigenous in the future be up to one person.
Well said, Dvinia. Thank you very much. How about yourself, Sheena?
You know what? I actually think that Rosie and Dvinia answered that so well. I was really struggling for the words, but then hearing them both, I'm kind of a little lost for words, because I think they captured really what it is that we think about and deal with each and every day. And some days it's tougher than others, but we just I don't know, the things that I turn to, the things that fill my tank, that build my resilience and make me fight another day is my culture and my connection to my people and elders. So I would just I'm just all in support of everything that was said. And some days they're harder than others, especially when some people try to, weaponize your Aboriginality against, wanting you to turn against the party. I think, or to vote a different way, or I think some of those challenges are really big and really tough, and I just, there's some tough days ahead for me, and when I've got people saying, anti-vaxxer movements and others lending themselves to thinking that because I'm an Aboriginal person, I won't support vaccinations and all these sorts of nonsense that's kind of coming out at me. I know that who I turn to and who I lend myself to is my community and my identity and my elders, and so I'm just trying to deal with that and the now 1,450 emails that I've gotten today from anti-vaxxers. So, woo!
Wow, Sheena, that's a lot of emails. Thank you. And I do agree. I think Dvinia and Rosie both summed that up very, very well. I'm now going to go to, I'll stop being selfish and I'll open up to others for questions. I actually have one from Senator Sue Lyons. What are the things that non-Aboriginal politicians can do to support First Nations politicians? There's also a follow-on. Do political parties also need to change? Who would like to go first? Sheena.
I had one to that first question. I was pretty enthusiastic about that one, which is to honour and respect the fact that we carry a cultural load, and can you just try to do your very best to not add to that each and every time? I mean, I know that anytime there's a question to do with any Aboriginal person, issue, community group, elders, traditional owners, native title case, like some of my colleagues immediately come to me and I go, hold up, have you, done the reading, read the report, reached out to your, traditional owners or native title holders? No. So I think that sort of piece about being a good ally is actually really important, and it's a really good question. So I think that's probably one, and I'm sure the others would have some questions, some answers to that one as well. But and to recognise that we are not the Aboriginal Google, as Dvinia put it, because I don't know all things about every Aboriginal person that exists in my state and what are their political beliefs, what are their motivations, what are their community aspirations, what's their history and trauma and story. Like, I don't know that, and it's ridiculous to think that an Aboriginal person would know all of that all the time about everyone, every day, from the top of their head. Yeah.
Thank you, Sheena. I think you summed that up really, really well. How about yourself, Dvinia? What are things that non-Aboriginal politicians can do to better support us as Aboriginal politicians?
Look, having that ability to, state of WA, this huge event that happened in March where there was this whole bunch of new people that come in, and it was a full time where a lot more women and regional. I guess not, but having those groups of small network groups in regards to other members, those conversations and talking through two ways about, population doing without actually, just being focused, just coming to me and not just only as well, and strength and communication between each other to have comfortable conversations. In regards to non-Aboriginal, in regards to venting and getting through as a person, but in bigger issues, I really think that if parties don't, they should have First Nations Caucus Party, where they are talking about kind of legislation or policy changes that Indigenous people should go through a scope of, specific issues, housing or something like that. Then the question is, how does this affect WA people? But how does legislation affect Indigenous people? The consequence of legislation. Indigenous people in the parliament to form a group or a caucus, let's say, to have those discussions and have those real robust, strong conversations to back each other up in regards to that. But yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dvinia. That was some really great practical things for both parties and other ally politicians to think of as well. I think I might have missed out on Rosie.
Again, I got lost here.
So, what are things that non-Aboriginal politicians can do to better support Aboriginal politicians?
Oh, that's a... What are the things that non-Indigenous people can do to support Indigenous people?
As politicians. Yeah.
Okay, I better write this down so I can think. Okay. Well, I'm actually in the upper house, and we have a diverse group of people in there, and majority of them are women. And we have, the first Indigenous, we have the first Serbian, we have the first Sudanese, we have the first, there's a Canadian in there, we have a very diverse group of upper house members. So, and the interesting part is that about me being in there is that everybody do support each other, and I guess they acknowledge the fact that, hey, there is this diversity within the room, but also I guess there is this they've never had an Aboriginal person in here, so in the upper house who I guess can voice Aboriginal opinions or support race issues or yeah, so I'm not I haven't come across anything yet that I could voice here really of how non-Indigenous people, because I think I am experiencing that right now, the support from the non-Indigenous colleagues of mine, which has been really great. So I've got a friend who's Scottish. Sorry, Lorna, I forgot to mention you, but we got a Scottish lady in there too, and I sit with her, but I also share an office with her. So that diversity, we're learning about each other. So it's really good. It's not just about Australia for that reason. It's this really diverse background we all come from, and we're sharing all the different experiences. So for me, it's been really good, and I get to do that when I'm in Parliament with my colleagues. So, and they are a very good group of people to be with. And honestly, again, I am learning, and I am enjoying every minute of it. That's what I aim to do. You got to have fun along the way too. So I'm actually going to make sure I'm going to have fun, because I've become a politician late in life. So I think I'm just going to have fun for the next 4 years while doing some hard work.
Good on you, Rosie. I think that's a great outlook, and it's really great to hear that you already have an established support network with all of your colleagues as well. I might just see if there are any questions from the floor. No questions from the floor. Just mindful of time and of your incredibly busy schedules. And just before I let you go on your way, I just wanted to thank you again for taking the time to participate in this panel session, for opening up about your experiences as Aboriginal politicians. Mainly we're all women because we couldn't get Kyam to connect with us today due to IT difficulties. And I guess just taking a lot of strength and a lot of wisdom out of your contributions, the need for us to have balance, the need for us as politicians to have a plan and to make sure that we have the support networks to help us care for ourselves and to make sure that we stay on track to deliver what we can for every single person in our constituencies. So thank you again and good luck for the rest of your journey, and I look forward to catching up with you all individually outside of this conference. So thanks again. See you later.
Thanks, ladies. Thanks, Larry.
Thanks.
I'll hand back to